Oh, have you ever heard of Jim Nabors? Let me tell you, he's the kind of guy whose name immediately sparks a memory, a smile, or a laugh. Who was he, you ask? Well, grab a seat, because we're about to dive into one of the most interesting biographies you'll ever hear. This isn't just about an actor or a singer, it's about a man who brought joy, warmth, and incredible talent to millions worldwide. Jim Nabors wasn't just a performer, he was an icon, a singular figure in entertainment history. Now, James Thurston Nabors was born on June 12, 1930, in Sylacauga, Alabama. Yes, Sylacauga, the town famous for its white marble quarries as much as it was famous for the man we're talking about. Jim was the youngest of 3 children, and you know what they say about the youngest sibling. They tend to be the dreamers, the ones with a flair for creativity. His father was a policeman, and his mother was a homemaker. They lived a typical, modest Southern life. But typical wasn't a label you could ever put on Jim, not even as a kid. From the beginning, Jim had chronic asthma, which meant he couldn't take part in the rough-and-tumble Southern sports culture of the era. No football for him, no backyard wrestling matches with the other children. Instead, while many kids were out playing and getting into mischief, Jim found himself retreating into a world of imagination. He took up singing at an early age, mostly for church and school events. Can you imagine that? A young boy with this remarkable, deep baritone voice that seemed to come out of nowhere. It was the kind of voice that you didn't forget, even if he was singing something as simple as a hymn. Now, during his teenage years, Jim attended Sylacauga High School. He wasn't the quarterback, nor was he the class clown. He was a little reserved, tending to keep to himself. But his talent started surfacing in those high school theater productions and choir performances. No one who heard him sing then could deny there was something truly unique about this kid from small-town Alabama. Still, back then, could anyone have predicted that little Jim Nabors would one day rub elbows with Hollywood elites, perform before millions, and be woven into the fabric of American culture? Probably not. After high school, Jim went on to the University of Alabama, where he majored in business administration. Yes, business administration. Jim Nabors wasn't initially planning to become an entertainer. No one was looking at him thinking, oh, there goes the next big star. In fact, Jim himself wasn't even thinking that way. He just went to college because that's what you did. At Alabama, Jim was part of Delta Tau Delta fraternity, but even in college, his asthma plagued him, so he wasn't out there making a splash on the field or courts. Instead, he relied on his charm and his voice. He got noticed for his stunning bass baritone, often singing for school events and local gatherings. Now, one interesting thing about Jim is that post-college, he didn't go straight into showbiz. Oh no. He actually moved to New York City first. And you'd think, this is where he tries Broadway. But nope, that didn't happen. The hustle and bustle of New York weren't completely his thing. And so, after a short stint, he relocated to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he found work editing film for television stations. From Chattanooga, he eventually moved to a television station in Birmingham, Alabama. But it wasn't long before Hollywood came calling, or rather, before he went calling to Hollywood. In the early 1950s, Jim decided to pack up his dreams, his asthma medication, and his charisma and head west to California. Can you picture that? A young man, unsure of himself and his talents, driving out to the land of stars and sunshine. In LA, Jim began working as a film cutter for NBC. Yes, film cutting. Hardly glamorous, right? But here's the thing about Jim Nabors. He didn't need glamour to shine. He just had that natural warmth that turned heads even in casual, unremarkable moments. Now, here's where the story turns interesting. In his downtime, Jim started performing at a nightclub called The Horn in Santa Monica. It was a quirky little place, eclectic and full of creative people. He'd perform comedic monologues, and his shtick was delivering these monologues in a thick, exaggerated Southern accent. People ate it up. But the kicker? After all those goofy bits, Jim would take a turn and start singing. And the voice that came out of him? It was spellbinding. One minute, he's got everyone laughing their heads off, and the next, he's bringing them to tears with that luscious voice. It was at the Horn that Jim's unique combination of comedy and vocal talent led to a fateful meeting. Andy Griffith heard about Jim and came to see a performance. Imagine that! Andy Griffith himself, already a beloved TV star, recognizing this incredible talent. Andy took one look, or rather one listen, and knew there was something special here. It wasn't long before Jim got cast as Gomer Pyle on The Andy Griffith Show. And boom! Just like that, a character that was supposed to be a one-shot guest appearance became one of the most iconic roles in sitcom history. Gomer Pyle wasn't just your average sitcom character. He was innocent, goofy, and genuinely endearing. Jim brought a sincerity to the role that made people fall in love with him. Watching him say Shazam or golly in that nasal southern drawl was pure magic. And for 5 incredible years, Jim Nabors made television history as Gomer Pyle. But wait, it gets better. After leaving the Andy Griffith Show, Jim didn't just fade into the background like so many TV stars of the era. Oh no, he went on to star in a spin-off series, Gomer Pyle USMC. Think about this. Jim Nabors took a sitcom character and turned him into a television legend that would last for decades. The show was a massive success, combining Gomer's innocent humor with the discipline of military life. Here again, Jim brought that perfect balance of comedy and heart. When you tuned in to Gomer Pyle, you knew you were in for a good laugh, but you also knew you'd walk away feeling a little better about life. Now, here's what a lot of people don't know. Jim Nabors was way more than just a comedian. Yes, he was funny, but that voice. Oh, that voice. Outside of acting, Jim Nabors had a breathtaking singing career. He recorded over 30 albums throughout his lifetime. 30 albums! His operatic baritone was in such stark contrast to the Gomer Pyle character that audiences were absolutely floored when they heard him sing. Songs like The Impossible Dream became his signature, along with hymns and standards that showcased the sheer depth of his talent. He even performed in sold-out concerts around the world. Can you imagine that? Gomer Pyle thrilling audiences at the Royal Albert Hall. And oh, let's not forget his deep connection to sports fans, particularly those of the Indianapolis 500. Starting in 1972, Jim Nabors became an integral part of the race's tradition by singing Back Home Again in Indiana. Fans adored him, anticipating his performance every year with reverence and excitement. His voice became as much a part of the Indy 500 as the cars themselves. But Jim Nabors wasn't all glamour and fame. In his personal life, he was as down-to-earth as they come. In 2013, Jim married his longtime partner, Stan Cadwallader, in Seattle after same-sex marriage became legal in Washington state. They had been together for nearly 38 years by then. Can you believe that? They kept their relationship private for so long, and when they finally tied the knot, it was such a pure and beautiful moment. Jim Nabors lived a simple, peaceful life in his later years. He moved to Hawaii, where he had a sprawling estate, and spent his days surrounded by the beauty of nature. He loved gardening and tending to his land. And despite his immense fame, he always remained the humble, kind-hearted man from Sylacauga, Alabama. Sadly, as all legends eventually do, Jim Nabors passed away on November 30th, 2017, at the age of 87. But what a life he led! From a shy, asthmatic kid in Alabama to a beloved television star, singer, and icon, Jim Nabors left an indelible mark on the hearts of millions. His warmth, humor, and talent continue to live on in the countless lives he touched.
Golly, indeed. What a man. What a legacy.